After the First World War, the famous phrase, "the world is on fire," was coined by Woodrow Wilson. Now, why did he say this? It's because the Bolsheviks had just taken power, German workers had helped lead to the defeat, to the end of the First World War, and the bourgeois were increasingly worried and terrified that revolution was knocking at their door, at the idea that revolutions were spreading. And if you think about it, that's not that far removed from what we're seeing today. Specifically, the idea of revolutions spreading. Last summer in Bangladesh, for example, students led a revolution that caused the end of a hated regime. Around the same time, young people in Kenya were helping to lead a mass movement that had revolutionary implications. And over the last couple of weeks, we've seen again young people, or what's being described as the Gen Z revolution, taking place in countries like Nepal and Indonesia. And what we're seeing is young people literally setting parliament on fire. We're seeing young people at the forefront of struggles against inequality, corruption, state violence. So what we're saying is the world is on fire once again, and we want to discuss that. And to help me discuss that, I'm joined by Khalid, the London organiser with the RCP.
Nice to be back. Nice to be back.
Welcome to the World on Fire.
Yeah. And a good name.
World on Fire.
A World on Fire.
Yes.
And a world to win. It seems like a very apt title for us to go for.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances at the moment in the world. And I think this is what this podcast should be there for, right?
Yeah.
The media cycle is broken. And so many people are just not engaged with the news. They don't even get their news that way.
Yes, there was a study about this, or an article talking literally about news avoidance.
Yes.
It's it's at a record high. People just don't engage with the news.
Yeah. And is it any surprise? Because it's always just doom and gloom. And I feel like the people that take this to heart the most are often those on the left that see just this bleak sea of reaction in front of them. And they think there's no possibility really for things to change. They become incredibly pessimistic. And I think we've seen this especially in the last couple of years, especially as right populists have begun to top the polls in country after country, right?
Yeah.
We've seen it with the AfD doing very well in Germany, National Rally in France, Reform here in Britain. And there is this tendency sometimes on the left to just focus on the electoral front, right? The electoral plane, and say, well, the right are on the advance with all of their racist, divisive nonsense, and the left are nowhere to be found. But actually, what we see when we look at the wider picture, when we look at the global context, is that there is a massive polarization that goes both ways, in fact, right?
Yeah.
It's not that people are just becoming more and more reactionary, more and more racist and right-wing. In fact, there are revolutions breaking out and no one seems to be talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's why we're doing this podcast, right? Unlike the bourgeois media, we don't pretend that we are neutral observers of what is happening all around the world. No, we are Marxists, we are communists, observing what is happening and analysing it from the perspective of the working class. And that is why we think it's so important to spend this time saying, actually, you don't just need to doom scroll.
Yes.
You don't just need to feel horror at what you're seeing on TikTok or whatever it is, but there are revolutions taking place today. That's not a far away, distant thing that's consigned to your history textbook. That is life today in 2025.
Yes.
And that's an incredible thing.
For sure. And this is part of, I'd say, two of the main features of the world situation at the moment.
Yeah.
We keep on seeing the power of the masses when they move, no matter in what country, beyond the borders, and that question. And we are seeing the radicalization of the youth really reach a fever pitch in country after country. And so I think that's what our USP really is, to point that out to people and show to communists, to revolutionaries in Britain, that there are real lessons that we can draw from all of these movements. And Christ alive, what a month the working class, what a month the youth have had.
I almost want to say slow down,
but sure. Don't. And of course, I think the editorial board of Marxist.com, our international's website, is struggling to keep a pace with everything that's been taking place over the last month. I mean, starting with Indonesia, right, where these MPs gave themselves fabulous pay rises, and all of a sudden Parliament went up in smoke.
Yeah.
Then it spread to Nepal. And
Yeah.
I think we should talk a little bit about that, because the spark was this social media ban. But all of the injustice that people felt and the poverty in this incredibly exploited country, all of a sudden came bursting to the surface. And then in the last couple of days, we've had an article written on East Timor,
Yes.
anti-corruption. At the moment in the Philippines, we see again a huge anti-corruption movement led by the youth. And in Peru as well, out against the hated government of Dina Boluarte, who was called the murderer, the person that was literally slaughtering people on the streets of Peru not so many years ago.
Yeah.
And against, these recent pension reforms, these austerity measures that are being presented to the working class. So revolutions are taking place everywhere. And we've, of course, been on campus, started our Autumn Offensive, our Freshers campaign, to meet young people and recruit them to the RCP. A question that's often asked is, I hate the way the world looks, but what is a revolution? What are you fighting for?
Yeah, I think this is an important thing for us to be clear on. What is a revolution? Because although they're happening quite frequently at the moment, it doesn't happen every single day. And indeed in some countries, we haven't had a revolution in Britain for a long time, for example. And it's because a revolution is a seismic moment where you see the masses, and we talk about the masses on a grand scale, really entering the stage or the scene of history. I would describe it as a moment when the masses are beginning to take more agency over their lives. There's a direction of struggle, a more conscious direction of struggle, I suppose, against the state, because the ruling class is in a position where it's struggling to rule in the way that it typically does, in a peaceful, calm, or so-called democratic way. And what you witness, or what happens in a revolution, is a kind of festival of the oppressed, right? I think that's one of the ways in which Lenin has described it, where they enter onto the scene of history to try and take control, to try and enact some agency. And as I say, the ruling class are struggling to rule in the same way. There's splits at the top. And that's quite a significant thing.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't happen every single day.
Yes.
But that is what we've seen over the last couple of weeks in the countries that you've mentioned. And I think that we should draw out the fact that in all of these places, this question of inequality has been really key.
Yes. It's
the fact that we would say today there has never been such a huge gap between the rich and the poor. The scale of historic wealth it's extreme.
Society has never been richer.
It's unheard of, and that's also why we're seeing this fast kind of, spilling over of revolutions. Another way it can be described as like a dam bursting. And again, it's not just that, people are seeing that people are rich. It's the accumulation of lots of different things in one society or in one place over a period of time that means at a certain point, a step too far has gone. And whether it's a social media ban or anything like this. A corruption scandal, an accident, the killing of someone, at a certain point it tips everything. And you see the masses begin to move in a really powerful way. Because if you think about it, a lot of what keeps people at bay, there is an ideology that weighs in society that this is just how things are. And things can't change. And the bourgeois consciously promote that idea that this is just the way things are. But that idea cannot last forever. No. And it doesn't last forever.
It begins to break down off the back of huge events, right?
Yeah.
That shake people up. And in revolutions, of course, people find their voice.
Yeah.
This feeling of helplessness that ordinary people face, like, why am I important? Why does it matter what I think and where I want society to go?
What can I do?
Yeah, that feeling of almost hopelessness in the future is overcome in such a quick space of time.
Yeah.
And consciousness develops leaps and bounds
in hours.
In hours, and that is extremely significant. And I think I like the analogy used of a dam bursting. We often talk about these things as like a wildfire spreading as well, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that's what's led people to discuss this idea of a a South Asian spring, right?
Yes.
Kind of reminiscent to the Arab Spring that took place 15 years ago. You remember at the time, people would say, as they're saying now, oh, it's caused by just outside agitators, or it's caused by the I don't know, social media, people kind of glorifying violence and this kind of thing. In fact, what I think revolutions really show is that the situation has become unworkable for the masses, and the ruling class can't rule like it used to before.
Yes.
And so you see so many superficial analyses. It's because of this particular thing.
Yeah.
And if this wouldn't have happened, then maybe that it wouldn't have unfolded like this. But actually, when you look at a country like Nepal and you see the dire poverty that people live in, the political instability that's racked the country. I mean, in one of the articles we released, it said that the remittances, so people sending money back home, make up something like 26% of Nepal's GDP.
Yeah.
And it's dominated by Indian imperialism, and this new guy who's now gone, who was very aloof, very arrogant, said, you guys should get off the streets, and you can't even think clearly. And then, of course, he's gone. They've sent him packing, just like they did with Sheikh Hasina last year. And she came to London. There's protests against that, of course. But it shows just how aloof and despised and detached this political elite are. And that, as you say, it's not you can't find one final cause for these things. It's an accumulation of the injustices that people face. And this spark, all of a sudden, just sets society ablaze. And I think this is really significant because this is what began in Indonesia as well, with the burning down of parliament, police stations. And what I think is such a common feature of this Gen Z revolution is a rejection of all political parties.
All of you are rotten.
Yes, all of you are rotten. Dissolve this house, you don't stand for us. And the youth have really been thrust into the forefront of all of this.
Yeah, I think this is really important because, a while ago there was a lot of stuff in the media, and it's kind of still today. Actually, Boris Johnson was writing this weird column at the moment in the Daily Mail about how young people are really soft and they're scared to drink and they're scared to have sex and they're scared. It was all this really bizarre stuff, right? But it's just this idea that, Gen Z, they're just these really soft people for some kind of, I don't know, innate reason. But actually, one of the points that we make is, one, it's not that Gen Z is soft or anything like that. It's actually what we're seeing is Gen Z is literally leading revolutions across the world. But more importantly than that, if you think about life, if you grew up in Nepal or Indonesia, and we'll come on to Britain later on, and you're 18, 19, 20, whatever it is, all you have seen is a corrupt parliament, injustice every single day, whether it's from the point of view of wages, of conditions, economic questions, or broader things like suddenly banning social media and cutting people off from their family and friends on the outside. I mean, this question of remittances is quite a serious one that has a massive impact on people's lives in these countries. And so these people can only see those in power as one block who lie, and maybe some are slightly better than the other, but no matter what, life is terrible and it seems to be getting worse. And I don't trust any of you. So if you are a politician, you're probably a bad person. You're probably corrupt. You're probably saying one thing in an interview and then going home to a massive house. And why should I listen to you? I think it's just like the whole thing is dirty, and that means that they're not buying. That's why these revolutions, I think, are happening so suddenly and so quickly, and the ruling class is so shocked by it. There's an arrogance to these people where they're used to this life of luxury and getting away with it. I mean, also, this luxury of these politicians, they weren't hiding it. No. They were displaying it in the most grotesque way. I mean, there was these insane videos that you could see. Yes, of the son, I think, of the Prime Minister in Nepal, and he was posing next to a Christmas tree, which was, the ornaments on it were Louis Vuitton bags.
You can't make it up.
It's extraordinary, and so it's gone too far, and so young people are, and because they're young and that's all they've seen, they're not bought in by any of the general rhetoric that the government might try to promote in a kind of vague nationalistic way, right?
Yes, yeah. Unburdened by defeats from the past.
Exactly.
Stand to gain the most from entering into struggle.
Exactly.
And it comes back to something we say very often, that the youth is a very sensitive barometer for the moods in society.
Yes.
Because young people feel like their lives are most affected by this crisis-ridden system.
Yeah.
And it's not as though everyone that has entered into the revolution has come out with like the perfect, spotless communist program.
Of course.
But of course, they know what they're against. And
Yes.
I think something we have to make very clear is when we say they're against all political parties, it's the parties on the left as well that are just as corrupt, are just as willing and eager to basically uphold the capitalist order.
Yeah.
And so this is why these movements are, almost like sporadic, right? Like they're bursting to the surface. There's a kind of chaos to them.
Yes.
And of course, that's because the youth don't feel like there is a channel, a party, an organization that can really direct them beyond, basically. And I think this is a significant thing we should say for these revolutions, for all of those people saying, oh, these revolts and the violence that's been brought to the streets. Firstly, these people don't comment on the systemic violence of the capitalist system.
Every single day.
Every single day of the week. And also, where are the parties that actually represent the aspirations of these youngsters?
Yeah.
They are nowhere to be found, and they need to be forged.
Yes.
But just on this question, when we were doing a bit of research for this podcast, we saw that one of our quite mainstream competitors, The Rest is Politics, also had a feature on the Gen Z revolution.
I think they're following us.
Maybe. We're definitely following them. The second highest ranking podcast, I think, in the world. But in this, Rory Stewart says something funny. He's talking about the Gen Z revolution, in Nepal in particular.
Mm.
And he says at one point, well, you can kind of understand why people would revolt in countries like this. There's a lot of corruption and so forth. But he kind of, I don't know, maybe to ease his own conscience, he kind of points it out as if this is something that's peripheral to the West.
Mm.
Something like this couldn't happen here because there isn't rife corruption and it's not as obscene as it was in Nepal. How would we respond to that?
Yeah. It's extraordinary for a Tory and an ex-Tory MP to designate corruption as something that is, mainly to be found in, what should we say, the global south or something
Underdeveloped
like
world.
Underdeveloped world. And what they mean by that is that it's a caricaturate of these people or these cultures, and there's huge layers of racism involved in it, undeniably. But the point is, corruption is innate to capitalism.
Mm.
And who has perfected that more than anyone? Who's had the most amount of time to perfect that, other than the Western capitalist countries, including the mother of all parliaments, Britain,
Yes.
which has had hundreds of years to perfect its capitalist state and legalise its corruption, in fact, in the form of various different lobby groups or different jobs and systems. We talk about the revolving door that exists between government and then other jobs you can get in the state, which is ostensibly supposed to be removed, and all of this stuff. It's absolute nonsense. Corruption is part and parcel of the capitalist system itself.
Yes.
How else should we describe the very fact that when there was the 2008 financial crash, the banks were completely bailed out using the working class? The working class for the last 15 years has been paying back the debt that was caused by the banks and the speculation that they were doing and the bubble and the housing market bubble that was burst in 2008. That was because of the capitalist system and the way in which it is run. And for Rory Stewart, who is, we should say, like, probably the most brilliant example of the arrogant, almost aristocratic kind of layer of the British establishment, to, just dismiss corruption as this terrible issue that, afflicts these poor countries and these poor people. You are corrupt, actually, and so is the mate who sits next to you, Alistair Campbell, every week in that podcast.
That's right, and it's just the goal of a Tory MP that was sitting MP during the pandemic.
Absolutely.
When the Tory government was doing what?
Yeah.
Handing out £1 billion deals
Contracts.
to its mates.
Yeah, Matt Hancock. I mean, this is what they did. They allowed all of the equipment and oh my god, I forgot what it was PPE. That's what it's called. PPE. All of the PPE, all of that stuff, life-saving, necessary, really important, equipment that was needed. And how you would think this is such a serious issue that it should go through proper structures.
Yes.
No, I know a guy who I knew at uni.
Yeah. Who happens to be my neighbour.
We'll give him billion pound contracts. It is it's outrageous. But this is the ideology of the ruling class in the West.
For sure, and also this idea that it couldn't spread to the West is absolute nonsense. When you think about the movements in the last year or so, right? Something that we've been following very closely has been the youth movement in Serbia, which began because a canopy collapsed and people died. And people could see straight away in Serbia that this was a result of corrupt politicians. Yeah. You also saw with the railway, I think the railways going off the tracks, the rail disaster in Greece, a similar movement against, the corruption of high officials, the high authorities and stuff like this.
Yeah.
I mean, for Christ's sake, Grenfell has been a huge issue. I mean, if it were to take place today, a block of flats basically going up in smoke as a result of no safety precautions being taken, what would the response be? People would immediately look for someone to blame. How many people were charged for Grenfell?
Exactly none. Yeah. No, and these people literally caused the death of 72 people, and no one has been charged. These people are criminals, and we should say the anger at that time and the anger now still, even in that community, is strong. And they call these people murderers, people who murdered for profit, and they know that. But if that happened, as you say, again today, it would connect with this wider mood, I think, that exists, which is that politicians are corrupt. And so, I mean, Rory Stewart and these people think it's a faraway thing, but we're looking at Nepal and thinking, could this happen in Britain?
Yes, we are. And I think if Starmer was to be honest with himself, when he looks across the channel, he shouldn't be worried about the small boats, but what the working class is doing on the streets of Paris right now. It's really fabulous to see the working class mobilize in such a strong way. And when you think about the French government, the French crisis, which is a similar sized economy to here in Britain, last December, Michel Barnier's government collapsed because he couldn't basically pass through a budget that had a whole host of measures to attack the working class. And his attitude at the time was just that, well, to hell with the next person that tries to do this. and to be frank, this is exactly the situation that Francois Bayrou found himself in. Yeah. Again, he put forward a no confidence vote in himself. There was no confidence in the budget he was trying to pass. When you look at that budget, it's something like 43 billion euros worth of cuts. I think we said this last week that the budget that Starmer is going to have to present to Parliament could be up to £50 billion worth of cuts, right? Yeah. And when you break it down, it means attacking basically all sections of the poor masses, retracting public holidays, which could never be popular, and so on and so forth. And yet the masses in France have responded to this with renewable strikes. Mm-hmm. You have radical sections of the unions talking about bringing the government down.
Let's block everything.
Let's block everything is what they're saying. They're saying this is class war, and we need to be fighting on the streets. And the last thing I read was that 1 million people were out on the streets, and they don't want a change of the top brass. They want Macron's government to fall. And they want, our comrades over in France have been calling for a workers' government, which is really beginning to strike a chord. So if I was Keir Starmer, I would be worried about Nepal, but I would definitely be worried about France as well.
I mean, what we've just seen in France is an example of, one of the founder of our organisation, Ted Grant, is well known for this phrase that not a phone rings, not a bulb shines, without the kind permission of the working class. And that let's block everything. We're going to shut this down because what you're trying to do to us is a reflection of that. Which it's poetic, but it's not just poetry. It's real. This is class struggle. This is what we talk about when we speak about workers becoming conscious of their power and the role that they play in society, and how strikes on a bigger scale, even on a mass scale, on a general scale, provoke that, make that conscious for workers.
Yes.
Of course, it's not a done deal. There isn't a workers' government in France yet. But this is an important part of the process, of the accumulation of injustice and struggle that can lead to a revolution.
Yes, for sure. And I would say for some years now, alarm bells have been ringing in the ears of the ruling class here in Britain about what the future holds. I mean, I was looking back on something we put in our perspectives document when we were discussing, I think back in 2020, the fate of Britain, where it was going. And this is from a Financial Times editorial. I'm going to read it in full because it's extremely powerful, and it wasn't written by a Marxist. Maybe I should have said the quote first and then said this wasn't written by a Marxist.
Was it Cal?
Was it Rob? So the quote goes, "Since the global financial crisis, this sense of betrayal has fueled a political backlash against globalization and the institutions of liberal democracy." Of course, this is what they've been crying about recently. "Right-wing populism may thrive on this backlash while leaving capitalist markets in place, but as it cannot deliver on its promises to the economically frustrated, it is only a matter of time before the pitchforks come out for capitalism itself and for the wealth of those who benefit from it." I mean, this is very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a perspective I would say we agree with, but from
100%.
the other side of the barricades
Yes.
to the Financial Times.
Yeah.
Because Farage is topping the polls in Britain at the moment. He's really gaining ground. However, something we've pointed out many times is, if he were to come to power, he would sit on all the same problems as Starmer's government right now.
And it would, probably cause even more anger and backlash, therefore.
Yes.
It's kind of linked to, also I would say, part of our perspective about Donald Trump and America, right? That Trump came to power off the back of huge actual aspirations.
Yes.
The Trump vote the second time round, which seemed even more powerful because people were so angry at Biden. Trump has made all of these promises about the economy that won't be able to see them through. Yeah. And so when they swing against him, it'll be really firm.
Yes.
And really harsh. And again, just Rory Stewart's stupid idea that it could be a faraway thing, and it's not just Rory Stewart, but the idea that revolutions don't happen in the West. There's that quote that you read from the Financial Times is good. I also found this really just funny quote from some billionaire, I don't know his name. Would it be fine? It was Nick something? Nick something. We'll find it.
Mr. Maybergs.
Yeah, and he's one of these billionaires, because there's a few billionaires who've been making this point, please tax us.
Yes,
I think we probably should be taxed a bit more because we're worried about what will happen if we're not taxed, because there is all of this anger in society. So he made a statement of that kind, also talking about pitchforks. And then he literally said, "Do you think the US is special or different? You're wrong. No nation is immune. Just ask the Russian Tsars or the French aristocracy."
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of these people can see what's coming.
For sure. And actually...
And they should be worried.
Yes. We're shooting this in London 2 years ago at the Savoy Hotel, which is very close to KCL, where we have a communist society.
Yeah.
There was a meeting of this group, I think, called the Patriotic Millionaires. And these were the types that were basically saying, if inequality continues the way it is, we are going to see the forks come out for us, the pitchforks. And so one of the main organizers appealed to apparently rooms of hundreds of very rich people that we can be heroes if we just share a few more crumbs with the working class and push for the government to
That's shocking.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to start singing then.
No. Push for the government to do a wealth tax. I think that's the thing that they were after. So this question about whether or not we can see it in Britain, I mean, this is what the bourgeois are saying. This is what millionaires are fearful of.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea that this is actually for a land far away is kind of ridiculous. And especially to come back to a point we started this podcast on, of like the radicalization of the youth. There's been lots of polling coming out recently that has commented on just how extreme this radicalization has got. And I think a lot of people will be wondering, well, why is that the case?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have definitely referenced this a few times, but we should do it again, which is the polling, I would say, also about communism specifically is worth mentioning. I mean, I think it's 32% of 18 to 24-year-olds view communism favorably. It actually gets higher for the age bracket above. It's 40% of 24 to 32-year-olds, something like that.
It's like millennial revolution on like upper end of Gen Z.
It's not as, and that, I mean, that is something that we literally are coming across every day through the Freshers campaign, which we can come on to talk about. But more broadly, no one can deny the fact that young people are very politicized, and a whole layer of it is to the left. And it is because of what we were saying earlier. But you think about these young people in Nepal. I said, they hate politicians because they're corrupt, because they have a lot of money, and because their life is so detached from what they experience.
Yes.
That is what young people in Britain experience every single day as well.
Yes.
And there's this added layer, I think, that exists in the West of this idea that we are told that if you grow up, you go to school, you go to university, you get a degree, you get a job, that's the trade-off then for have a house, have a family, and live your life. But now people are finding that they can do all of that stuff and actually, no, they can't afford a house, they can't afford a family, there's no such thing as stability, and they can't even get a job.
Yes.
I mean, one of the issues in Nepal was youth unemployment, which was particularly high in Nepal. I think it was at 20%,
20%.
which is very extreme. But youth unemployment is getting really high in Britain as well. Some of the stats say it's at 12%.
Yes.
And even, we should say, with all of these statistics, part of it is probably covered up and not reported on properly or effectively in the economy, which is a conscious tactic from the point of view of the ruling class. But I'm sure everyone listening to this will know anecdotally, it is extremely hard to get a job these days.
Oh, for sure.
After you've not just in the degree that you've studied, but any job.
Yes, yeah. And you can find this in the press.
Yeah, the bourgeois media have reported on this.
Yeah, I was reading an article before by The Times, and the title was "Inside the Hellish Job Markets Where Applicants Face 140 to 1 Odds." And in this, it was talking, this was a stat from the Institute of Student Employers. The average employer receives, 140 applications per role.
Yeah.
And there was a quote from a guy who I think had a quite well-to-do job before getting sacked or something like this, in his late 30s now. So he was a graduate around the time of the 2008 financial crash. And he said in his own words, it's harder to get a job now than it was back then.
Yeah.
He was talking about all of like the bureaucratic hoops you have to jump through, and even just the process of like interviewing at the moment,
so
right?
Dehumanizing.
I think he was saying like for kind of, I don't know, city jobs 15 years ago. So like the things that grads would basically be sucked up into doing.
Yeah.
It was kind of standard for you to do 3 interviews, which seems kind of excessive. But now it's drawn out long processes where if, for instance, you're working a job, you can't really be discreet with your employer if you're trying, I don't know, trialing for something for 2 months in order to be one of 100 going for it. And when I was thinking about this section, I was thinking about something we recently published in our paper. It was a letter by one of our supporters or maybe one of our members, and it was called "The Milestones We Can't Afford." And I just wanted to read from it because I think it really well summarizes a mood of a lot of people at the moment. And they're basically talking about how difficult it is to plan for a family, how difficult it is to have any security of housing. And they wrote to us, "No wonder so many people dread the idea of bringing a child into this chaos. More and more, we're being forced to sacrifice our futures just to survive the present. Yet right-wing rags like The Telegraph and The Spectator love to call our generation entitled, selfish, lazy, while we work some of the longest hours in the developed world. And for what? If not to build a stable, secure life, then who exactly are we doing this all for? I think that summarizes it perfectly, right? That this mood that is developing in society, that doesn't always find the clearest expression, but it's kind of an up versus down mood, an us versus them mood that is really beginning to grasp the minds of millions of people.
Definitely.
And people lacking a decent future, lacking decent prospects. And I think we can comment on the economic situation, the cost of living crisis, the inability to plan for a family. But it's not just economic issues that are affecting and radicalizing young people. I mean, Christ alive, let's start with Palestine, right?
Yes.
I'm guessing you saw Starmer's video over the weekend, the recognition of a Palestinian state.
I mean, this grotesque video after it was kind of, dangled over, the Palestinians a couple of months ago, not even that long ago, actually, when Starmer said, okay, we will recognize Palestine if Israel keeps doing what it's doing as a kind of attack against Netanyahu.
Yes,
I mean, I think this video has just enraged a whole layer of people. One, because what use is it for Starmer to come out or Britain to come out and recognise Palestine when it is continuing to be a part of its destruction every single day? We have to keep making this point. You continue to sell arms to Israel, which is conducting a genocide.
And gather intelligence for the Israeli security services.
And provide propaganda every single day for the continued existence of Zionism and everything that creates. So it's utterly meaningless for Starmer to come out and say this and to put forward the idea of a two-state solution. I mean, it's laughable. Everyone knows that Israel's intention is the complete destruction of Palestine and of the Palestinians, and is currently conducting ethnic cleansing.
Yes.
There is no Palestine so long as Israel maintains itself, right?
Yes.
On this basis. And so it's totally meaningless. But not just that, I know when I watched it, the first thing that I thought is, hold on a minute, Western imperialism for decades has used the Middle East as a playground for its own interests, for its economic interests and its political interests. And that's what imperialists do. And they divide it, they carve it up, they bomb it to hell. They'll do whatever they want. And I was just, who are you to recognize Palestine in the first place, Keir Starmer? What does that even mean? And why is that the world that we live in, where my right to exist as a Palestinian is supposedly dependent on the gracious word of Keir Starmer or any other British imperialist? I mean, it's revolting, actually. And I think that we know why he's done it. It's not because he cares about the Palestinians in any way, shape or form. It's because actually he's worried about the huge mass movement that does exist in Britain. And not just Britain, but across Europe at the moment.
It really seems to be picking up in Italy. With the Samud flotilla setting off from there. And I was reading a report from our Italian comrades before that was talking about the spontaneous protests that were taking place across Italy. I think something like a general strike has been called. I guess we have to monitor that very closely. A political strike for Palestine. And I was actually speaking to a comrade who is a member of the Teachers Union here in the UK. And he was saying at every NEU conference, we pass a motion in solidarity with Palestine. And he said, wouldn't this be a great opportunity for us to put forward the call for a political strike for Palestine as a way of attacking all of the anti-union legislation that's been heaped on our union for that past couple of decades? And I was like, I think you should put forward that as a motion and then get up on the stage and say, rather than this just being words, let's see real deeds on this question.
I mean, we're criticizing Starmer for his meaningless words, but we should also criticize the trade union leadership when they, symbolically come out in solidarity with Palestine, but then do something. Use not just your authority, but your actual ability to organize workers in a way that could make a real statement. And then Starmer will be Starmer is scared just off the back of, in the main, mass protests, but also, we should say, obviously, direct action, and the support that people have, for example, for Palestine Action, which has become a proscribed terrorist organization, according to Starmer. But there's continued, I think there's another protest coming up soon, actually, where people will once again probably be arrested in order to protest that prescription. But yeah, this is the point. Palestine is an example of a non-economic issue, a political issue that has radicalized in a serious way a whole generation. It is the defining issue, I would say.
And just on this note about the kind of class issues that are being brought out at the moment, and this feeling of people being left behind. I'm sure you saw over the weekend the pictures of the pomp and ceremony of the royal pageant show of Trump and King Charles.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments on this?
I think that, look, those images of the gold dripping from the walls to the tables to the plates to the forks, the literal crowns on the head of Kate and William, it is precisely this that can cause revolutions. It's the grotesque display of wealth, whilst on the one hand, we've got the abject horror of the Palestinians who are being starved to death. But also in this country, people are dying every single day as a result of austerity. And that is not an exaggeration. That is the conditions that people are being forced into. Food bank usage, all of this is going up. And these are the people that rule over us. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary that they think they can continue to get away with that kind of thing. And these are the images in the history books that will be chapters of the accumulated process of the revolution in Britain.
For sure. It actually reminds me of a whole chapter Trotsky spends talking about the Romanovs in the history of the Russian Revolution. And he talks about how aloof and detached they had become, and all of these palace intrigues and squabbles at the top. And at a time where more and more people could begin to see through their rule, right? See the deception right there in front of their eyes, and were beginning to move. And when they moved, it was powerful enough, of course, to see them overthrown, just like that. And I guess this is a good place for us maybe to begin wrapping up this episode, because something that the left say very often is, well, isn't our enemy so powerful that we can't overcome them? And actually, what all of these revolutions have begun to shine a light on is the power of the working class and the radicalization of the youth that is leading this forward. And just to end on a note of something written by the Sunday Times, so certainly not a Marxist paper, it's commenting basically on the Gen Z revolution.
Shout out.
And it says, shout out, yes. In despair, this is a quote, in despair, the young are turning towards communism. And this fella, Seb Payne, he warns that without a viable capitalist alternative, such ideas will enjoy a moment in the sun. And so my question for you, Fiona, is, hasn't capitalism enjoyed its moment in the sun?
Absolutely. I mean, the sun is shining on the communists, I think, now. And that is what we have experienced. We've begun our freshers offensive, if we want to call it that, which is the RCP. All of our communist societies are meeting hundreds, if not thousands, of students last week and over the next couple of weeks. And if you think about everything we've spoken about today, you imagine a young person, you're scrolling on TikTok and you're seeing, horrific images from Palestine. Then you're seeing an image from this banquet, this palace with Trump and Starmer. Then you're seeing Starmer recognize Palestine. And then you're seeing a revolution in Nepal. And then you're trying to apply for... All of that is happening all at once for this generation. And for some of them, they are already conscious that actually it's the system as a whole that is to blame. It is the fault of the profit motive, this excess of wealth and money at the top of society. Meanwhile, the rest of us have nothing. And in that environment, we are finding that people are directly looking to communism, because their idea of communism is whatever the opposite of capitalism is, right? And it's that something radical and something in the interests of the majority of people. And so we're meeting all of these people who come towards us. They're not all full-fledged, like, communists. They've read every book that Marx, Engels, Lenin, or Trotsky have ever written. Although I should say, some of them have already begun to read Marx.
Yes.
But they're coming to us going, yes, communism. I think I'm a communist. These are my questions. Yes. Can you answer them? And so that's why we are literally speaking this week on this topic, why you should be a communist.
Yes.
I'm going to be speaking at Queen Mary. You're speaking at
UCL this week.
It's the same night, so
yes,
we'll see who's better.
Well, we won't.
But yeah, or we won't. I'm also going to Manchester on Wednesday to do the same talk, and that is what the RCP is all about. We are saying we have the theory, actually, and we have the ideas. That is what we do as a party. We spend a huge amount of our time studying theory, so that we can understand the world around us, but also not just to cheerlead and be inspired by these revolutions that we've seen, that we've discussed in Nepal, Indonesia, and elsewhere, but also because we're saying, well, those revolutions have not succeeded in actually transforming the conditions of the people who are struggling, right? And that's because they don't yet have a party. They don't yet have a party with a program that can actually lead the workers to power.
Yes.
So that's what we're concentrating on. Yes. And I think we're meeting, so many enthusiastic people who are ready to get organised, who know the RCP before they even come to the freshers' stall.
Yes.
Which is,
and a whole generation that can see that the conditions are maturing in Britain for revolution.
Yes.
That's why they're searching us out.
Yeah.
That's why they know of the RCP.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to meeting all of these new people that will be joining our party over the next 2 months.
Yes.
Should we leave it there?
Yeah, I think we should.